everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I hope you can all hear me. Please shout if you can't. We are just dealing with a few technical issues, but in the meantime, I think we should get started. So Matt Reed from CCRI will be joining us as our host for today. But in the meantime, while we are sorting the tech issues out, I will take over for now. So today's webinar, we are going to be introducing TerraSafe, which is an exciting new EU and UKRI funded project, which is working with local communities to combat desertification. So I'll just run through today's agenda. So we're going to start off with Jakob Kaiser from University of Aveiro, who is the coordinator for the project. He's going to introduce desertification as a challenge and explain what the project's all about. We are then going to hand over to Lindsay Stringer from University of York, who will cover the multi-actor approach we're using, covering stakeholder engagement. And then we're going to speak with Adriana Bruggeman from Cyprus Institute, who is covering the mapping and analysing desertification aspects of the project. Next, Melanie Muro from the Institute for European Environmental Policy is going to set the policy context for the project. We will then have a Q&A session, so please do post your questions in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you and find out all of your different questions about our research. We're also going to signpost you to lots of key information throughout the session. So hopefully all will start to run smoothly soon. But first of all, we'll get started with Jakob. After a break, we have an innovation session, which we will introduce later on. So handing over to Jakob now. Jakob, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. Good morning to everybody. On behalf of the TerraSafe Consortium, I'll be talking a little bit about a general few aspects of the project TerraSafe. So desertification has been an international concern for over 2 decades, as many of you know, especially through the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. Would like to have this next slide, please. Desertification has been defined as land degradation in drylands due to, for example, climate variations and human activities. These land degradation have, please next. Land degradation has impacts in terms of loss of land-based ecosystem services, including but not limited to agricultural and forest productivity that can go down, reduced carbon sequestration, and therefore also reduced climate change mitigation, as well as impacts on water cycle regulation. So what about, next slide, please. What about desertification in Europe? In 2017, Prevali et al. Published an article in which they estimated that 25% of the land in southern, central, and eastern Europe had a high to very high vulnerability to desertification. Furthermore, climate change scenarios suggested that this vulnerability would be increasing in the future, also if current land management practices will be continuing as they are at the moment very intensively. So they called for an urgent need to tackle the implications, consequences of desertification in terms of environmental, social, as well as economic aspects. Next slide, please. So based on this need, what was done at the European level within the soil mission, or mission soil, a specific objective, that one of the 8 specific objectives was to reduce land degradation relating to desertification. This specific objective was then translated into a specific call, next please, which was related to innovations to prevent and combat desertification. Next slide, please. So what does TerraSafe hope to achieve? The innovations that TerraSafe hopes to certify through in-depth scientific study will focus on the environmental effectiveness as well as the economic viability of those innovations. The innovations will be tested, and the impacts TerraSafe hope to achieve is through the implementation of those innovations beyond the experimental scale by the pilot area farmers, as well as by other pilot area farmers, for example, that become familiar through demonstration activities. Then, of course, beyond pilot areas, the adoption by non-pilot area farmers, for example, through the implementation of policy recommendations that the project foresees to make. And then, of course, the project has a reduced duration of 5 years. The idea is that the impact assessment of the innovation and their demonstration will continue, for example, through living labs. And then the certified innovations, they are from companies. So the idea is that to develop business plans so that the innovations partner can have a larger scale commercial exploitation of their innovations. A second aspect in which TerraSafe hopes to achieve impacts, please next click, is through the approaches, methodologies and tools that are being developed and tested in the pilot areas. And what we are hoping is they will be taken up in part or entirely by other desertification-prone communities. And in fact, we already have a spin-off project, which is in Portugal, where there will be a Portuguese pilot area. Next slide, please. So how does TerraSafe foresee to achieve these impacts? The key to the project is a multi-actor approach, which focuses or tries to empower local communities so that they themselves can work on preventing and combating desertification, increasing desertification resilience. So it's all about co-developing, co-implementing, co-assessing the cost effectiveness, co-demonstrating, co-disseminating, and co-promoting the widespread adoptions of the innovations that we will be testing, which are nature-based, technological, and social. Next slide, please. So as a name for these local communities, we have chosen desertification innovation partnerships. And the pilot, as you can see in the scheme, the pilot area stakeholder community is at the center. The collaboration with the consortium will be through the pilot area partners. And then around it, we have a set of framework partners, which basically, and that will be explained in more detail by the colleagues that will give a presentation afterwards. In work package 2, multi-actor engagement. In work package 3, identifying the hotspots of desertification. In work package 4, to assess the cost effectiveness of those innovations. And in work package 5, to develop policy recommendations for the wider uptake of these measures. Next slide, please. So the consortium has 17 or 18 partners, I always forget, divided in 2 groups. So the innovation partners, which are companies who have developed already solutions that are close to the market in some cases are already on the market. And then we have the framework partners who are developing the methodologies, and the pilot area partners who are coordinating the work in the pilot areas. In fact, the place where the project will be working more concretely. Next slide, please. So we don't have one partnership, but we will have 5 partnerships. The idea is that they will be interconnected. They are spread over Southern and Eastern Europe. And actually, the 5 partnerships deal with different aspects of desertification. So in Italy, we are dealing with depopulation. In Romania, with vegetation and more particularly forest decline. In Spain, with water scarcity. In Cyprus, with soil degradation due to loss of organic matter, and soil degradation also in Tunisia, but linked to soil desalination in particular. Next click, please. So in terms of approaches, the work in Italy will be quite different because it deals with human populations. So it has a narrative analysis and compares 2 areas which has contrasting depopulation patterns. And the focus there is on social innovations, whereas in the other areas, as will be explained later on, the work is more experimental. So the idea is that those partnerships will also connect to other communities across the world where there are also issues with desertification vulnerability. So next click, please. Sorry, I like a lot of clicks. Yeah, thank you. That was it.
Lovely. Thank you, Jacob, and good morning, everybody. Apologies for the slight technical glitches, but we are spread out across Europe and North Africa. And let's be honest, this is so technically amazing that a few years ago we would have thought it was an absolute wonder, and now we think it's an everyday reality. So there's always a few slips. So, you know, let's all just be kind to each other, and we're doing great. So thank you, Jakob. And so next I'm going to introduce Lindsay. So Lindsay, please explain to us and tell us about the multi-actor approach.
Thanks very much, Matt. You may have just heard in Jakob's presentation use of the word co quite a lot. And what we do in TerraSafe is we really take that engagement of people as being at the centre of activities, recognising that while desertification might occur as an environmental problem, people are both part of the cause, but also a major part of the solution. We saw from Jakob's slides as well that across the different pilot areas, there are quite different manifestations of desertification. And it's the same if we look at the social context as well. People are different everywhere. So what we do in TerraSafe is recognise that we need a locally grounded approach, so that we're not just kind of having a blueprint, silver bullet type solution that we apply everywhere, but that we're adapting the process and adapting the innovations to actually meet that local contextual need that will come out from the research. Next slide, please. So in work package 2, that's where we really kind of get a grip on the whole multi-actor engagement side of things. And we focus on the stakeholders, those groups and those individuals that we've identified as having an interest or an expertise in combating desertification. And we call them stakeholders because they have a stake in what happens. They have a stake in the current situation, but also they can influence or are affected by what happens in the future. So what we aim to do is engage stakeholders throughout the project from the very beginning in various workshops and activities, so that we can work with desertification innovation partnerships, those groups of stakeholders that emerge through the project. We can work together to build desertification resilient communities. Now, it's not that all stakeholders will be involved all the time. It really depends on the type of activity we're doing in the project. But at the Desertification Innovation Partnership workshops, some of which have just been held recently in Cyprus and in Italy, we had a great collection of different stakeholders from different sectors, different groups who were engaging. So some will be involved in some activities and others will be involved in other activities as the project progresses. In terms of monitoring and learning, that will happen throughout, because we need to ensure that the engagement process is meeting everybody's needs and adapting as needed. It might be that we're asking for too much time from our stakeholders, or it might be that there's a lot of local enthusiasm that we really need to harness and we need to do more with our stakeholders. So it's really a case of getting that balance right and adapting as needed, and providing an overall reflection and evaluation of the process in the final year of the project, so that we can take that forward in other places, having learnt the lessons through TerraSafe. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we mean by building a desertification resilient community, desertification itself is defined as land degradation in dry areas, and it's caused by this interaction of human and environmental drivers. Resilience, though, is quite a complex word, and people tend to use it in different ways. But in TerraSafe, we're using it to refer to our responses to those pressures from desertification, but also our capacity to change, to protect those aspects that are important to us, while harnessing future development options as well. So desertification resilient communities that we aim to create, they're going to look quite different in each place. They're going to depend on local values, the stakeholders that are identified within that area, and the local context and the futures that each area want. Next slide, please. And as we define desertification resilient communities in those first stakeholder workshops, we're asking questions like, well, what does a resilient economy look like in this pilot area? What does a resilient social context look like? And what does a resilient environment look like? And how does it then support those economic and societal aspects? So we've got workshops, as I said, we've had the first workshop in some of our pilot areas, but throughout the project, there will be many, many more workshops to identify and refine those collaboration approaches, which will then be shared more widely across the different pilot areas and beyond. Next slide, please. So in terms of our next steps, what we need to do, although we've done a stakeholder analysis at the very beginning, in line with the good practice in the literature, we realised that, yes, between us as a consortium, we know quite a lot of people, quite a lot of groups, but we really need to do a regular review of stakeholders to make sure that no one's missing, because we need to make sure that all those relevant voices are at the table, so to say. We're looking and reflecting on the types and the characteristics of the different stakeholders with a view to understanding, well, are we ensuring an equitable and inclusive approach, or are we not taking into account the needs of some people where we need to improve that? And really the participatory activities of stakeholder engagement in Work Package 2, they provide this really strong foundation to underpin the data collection for the other TerraSafe work packages, because the project isn't possible without our stakeholders. So we're, as researchers, we're only half the story. We need our stakeholders to be engaged as well. Now, up to now, although the project began officially in June, in terms of the stakeholder engagement, I've been working on my own in this aspect, obviously collaborating with the others, but in York I've been based on my own. And I'm delighted to be here today and also be able to introduce Tom Timberlake, who from January is going to be working with me on the stakeholder engagement processes at the University of York. So I think Tom is online. I think he's going to introduce himself as well. He might be showing us Charlotte. We've still got a lot of people called Charlotte as panelists. I think it's part of the technical team, but we can go ahead with that. So Tom, it's a nice chance for you to introduce yourself to everybody.
Thanks, Lindsay. And can you hear me all right? Yeah. Great. Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks to everyone. It's great to be here and to meet you all. So yeah, my name's Tom Timberlake, and I'm a postdoc currently at the University of Bristol, where I'm just finishing off an ongoing project looking at pollination and smallholder farming in Nepal. And I'm really excited to be joining Lindsay at York and working on the Work Package 2 and the stakeholder engagement side of things. So my background is sort of from an ecology background. So I did a PhD on pollinator conservation in UK farmland. But then I've worked a lot more since then on the relevance of pollination and sort of sustainable farming practices to international development, particularly with smallholders. And for the last sort of 4 or so years, I've been working in Nepal through the University of Bristol on a kind of very stakeholder-focused project, working with smallholder farmers, policymakers, community groups to kind of co-design, come up with sustainable pollination management practices to try and support sort of smallholder farming in Nepal and come up with a sort of pollinator strategy for Nepal. So hopefully this will feed in quite nicely to the stakeholder work that we'll be doing in this project. And yeah, it's wonderful to meet you all, and I'm very excited to start on this in January. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Next slide. I think it's over to, well, Matt to introduce Adriana.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Lindsay. I'm conscious for those people who are viewing, there may be a slight multiplication of Charlottes, just to reassure you that we're not all Charlotte, although Charlotte is doing a great job in actually making sure that the slides move around. So thank you very much for Lindsay, and thank you very much for Tom. Very exciting, and I think we're all very encouraged to think that we'll be working together, because I think, you know, we all realize the importance of co-working and working and developing solutions. If we could find the answers on our own, we would have done so already. So it's only through working together that we will make any difference. So I'd like to welcome Adriana now. So talking about mapping and analysing desertification, really fascinating stuff. So I'm going to hand over now.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Matt, next slide, please. So here we will be working on integrated desertification assessment. So in current day research project speech, as already introduced by our coordinator Jacob, we would probably be talking about desertification co-assessment. But what we will be working on, as you can see here in the illustrations, we will use an integrated approach in each pilot area to assess and map desertification through analysis of spatial data sets, high-resolution satellite-derived indicators to analyze desertification processes. Looking from the satellite down on Earth, because most of our spatial data sets nowadays are derived from satellite data, we call this the top-down approach. But in TerraSafe, we also very much look at the bottom-up approach, putting our feet on the ground, as you can see in the picture on the right, talking to land users, doing surveys to map land degradation in the pilot areas, not only looking at degradation, but also looking at good land management practices. We need to go out there to see what's going on. From the satellite, it may look like degradation, but when we're on the ground, we may also see examples of good practices. But with this analysis, both bottom-up and the top-down, we aim to identify degradation hotspots in the pilot areas, which could be used for testing the innovations, what we will be doing in TerraSafe, and looking also at local innovations, so both innovations brought from outside through the project, but also considering the use of locally identified good practices. And then finally, we will deliver an online GIS app, which should be an easy to use tool and should be not another decision support system which goes out of use after the end of the project, but data layers which we can use in our current day GIS and mobile app mapping tools, right? So here we also see that there's a co-development, right? Making something that all people can use now and after the end of the project. Next slide. Okay, our starting point is the SDG 15.31, the Sustainable Development Goal for Land Degradation Neutrality. But this is what all countries need to deliver. So it's good what they are, currently seeing, right? Because most of it is based on satellite data, right? And so I mapped here, or the Cyprus Institute mapped here, the 4 pilot areas, starting from the left. This is Cyprus, and here we also see the effect of the different resolutions just on looking at the map. Right? So in Cyprus, we see that the scale bar is 5 kilometers on your top left, and it's quite good to see the 250 meter resolution grid points, seeing the bluish area, which is improving, and the red area where we see land degradation happening. Right? Moving to the top right, we see our pilot area in Spain, right? And there we see a lot of red, but we also see that the resolution of the map is 10 kilometers, right? So it's a larger area, right? And we see the blue coming through in the red area. Moving to the bottom, right? Romania, left bottom. There the pilot site is even, the extent of the pilot site's area and the scale bar is 20 kilometers, right? So a lot of the area doesn't show any color, it's stable, right? But we clearly can see some red spots coming out in the blue area in the south, which is improving, and that's the focus of where these people will be working and where they will be doing their surveys, the Romanian team. Then looking at Tunisia, it's a very, very dry and harsh environment. As you can see, it looks like a desert, and it is a desert, but you can see a bluish area. It's irrigated area, irrigating from groundwater resources. It's like an oasis, right? But inside the blue area, you also see the red spots of degradation, right? And here, I mean, we see that clearly you need to have this as an app because you need to zoom in because the scale bar here shows 50 kilometer scale. Right? So the land degradation neutrality indicator has 3 sub-indicators: land productivity change, soil organic carbon change, and land cover change. Right? At the moment, on these maps here, we're using only 7 different land uses. Right? So when we look at land productivity change, we look at the trends, but we also look at the surrounding areas. So how does the spot compare to the surrounding areas? So one of the issues we see here, irrigated and non-irrigated is not differentiated, right? So this is what we are going to be working on, starting from the baseline. We will be using much higher satellite data, higher resolution satellite data, but we will also looking on the ground what's going on. So that's the approach for our integrated land degradation mapping. Next slide. And then here shows some of the bottom-up work. We will have not only surveys with land users going around in the area looking at the land and talking to the land users, but we will also organize focus group discussions with stakeholders in the 4 pilot areas, with the people we have seen in, while we are doing the survey on the land, right? Good land users, bad land users. We will bring them together in the focus groups to talk to each other, see what practices work where and why they work and why they wouldn't work. So we will analyze the pilot area to the DPSIR framework, drivers, pressures, state, impacts and responses. This is also used by the European Environment Agency. Starting from the bigger picture, driving forces, which can mean poverty, labor availability, infrastructure access, but also conflicts. Right? Then the more direct pressures, land use trends, crop and land management, but also urbanization, deforestation, the direct pressures on the land. The state, which looks a little bit more into what we are seeing from the SDG indicators, right? Productivity decline, water use efficiency decline, and also the type and the rate of land degradation. Then the impacts, and here often we're looking at ecosystem services because it's important to recognize that yes, if the landowners protect the land, they are delivering ecosystem services. And with this, they should be also, obtain a benefit from this from society. And this is somewhat captured in the responses, because in the responses we see policies, right? And land management practices, right? But also how the policies can improve the support of the land management practices. So this is to get the understanding of why desertification happens and what do we need to do about it. Our Italy case study has a slightly different approach. It's a pure social science case where they're working with the land users on a narrative analysis, looking at depopulation and land abandonment in agricultural districts. Next slides. Okay, what we also aim to do is to develop an international community of practice on desertification assessment. In Jacob's presentation, you already saw the Mediterranean map and you saw the global map. And in my presentation, you saw maps at 4 different sizes of pilot areas. There are many, many different approaches, and they all have some good points and some bad points. But it's very important, if we want to combat desertification, that we cooperate together and all use the best sciences. So this is what we would like to see more cooperation between the scientists, researchers, practitioners on desertification assessment. So we are looking at cooperation, research and innovation projects and initiative, AGP Soil, the EU Soil Mission projects, the LIFE projects, PRIMA projects, national projects, other initiatives. But also, of course, eventually our work will go into the European Soil Observatory. So they're also one of our co-developers, our co-assessment people, but because it needs to remain also, out there for the larger public, not only for the pilot areas. International organizations such as WOCAT, World Organization for Soil Conservation Approaches and Technology, ISRIC, the International Soil Institute based in Wageningen, and FAO. You can see that these organizations were also already present with the development and the UN good practice for the SDG 15.3 indicators. So if we make progress on refining these indicators, we need to be also talk to the people who have worked on the development of these indicators. So please contact us through the TerraSafe website if you would like to join being part of the experts working on desertification assessments. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Adriana. Just to repeat to everybody, I think that was really good to see that the science is going to join up with the existing initiatives. So, we're continuing and joining in with that long-term work to preserve soil. So that's great. And I would really welcome everybody to kind of make contact through the TerraSafe website. Susanna's just put the link in the chat for you to follow. There are newsletters. We're across all of the social media you could think of. So you can make contact with us in all sorts of ways, but we would really welcome and value your participation. And looking at the chat where people are still introducing themselves to each other, which is great to see. We have people from, I think all over Africa. I was going to say not just North Africa now, but Africa, all over Europe. It's a fantastic chance to be part of a community of scholars and scientists working on this topic. So, please do get involved. So next up, I would like to invite our friend and colleague, Melanie, who's going to talk to us about the policy impacts, because obviously we've been talking about the people who own and manage the land, but we don't do that in a vacuum. We do that in a policy environment. And I'm sure Melanie's going to tell us about that and the work that TerraSafe will be doing. Okay, over to you, Melanie.
All right, thanks a lot. I hope you can hear me all right. Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Yes, thank you. I'm joining you today from the Institute of European Environmental Policy in Brussels, and I'm presenting what we are planning to do in our work package. Obviously, I'm not the only one doing the work, so co-leading this work with us is the University of Basilicata in Italy. I want to give you a brief overview of the work that we're planning to carry out to develop policy recommendations for regional, national, and EU level to promote the uptake of the innovations or solutions that we're testing in our pilot areas. Obviously, we want to have some impact in the pilot areas, but we're also trying to develop some policy recommendations that could lead to a wider uptake of these solutions where they are suitable and applicable, obviously. So the next slide, please. Before I sketch out what we are planning to do, I wanted to briefly introduce the policy context in which we are operating. And many of you will be aware that at EU level, we don't have a dedicated strategy or policy instrument to tackle desertification.
Okay, we just lost Melanie for a moment there. I think we've lost Melanie's audio.
Am I back now?
You are back, Melanie. We just lost you for a moment, so good to have you back. Please carry on.
Sorry, yeah, I don't know what's happening. It's a technical challenge today. So I'll try to continue and keep an eye on my audio. So as I just said, we don't have a dedicated EU strategy or policy to address desertification. But as we already mentioned earlier, there is a United Nations Convention to combat desertification. And it's so far the only legally binding international framework that is trying to drive action to reduce desertification and tackle the effects of droughts. The European Union, as a union of 27 individual countries, has signed up to the convention, and around half of the member states have actually declared themselves as being at risk of desertification. And this group not only includes Southern European member states, which you might expect, but also Central and Eastern European countries. And I think that reflects also what we saw in, for example, Adriana's slides, which covered also our case, a pilot site in Romania. What happens if you declare yourself as at risk of desertification? You are asked to draft a national action program outlining actions you're trying to take to combat desertification. But as the name says, it's mainly a strategic document and doesn't always have the real impact that we need to make changes on the ground. So what do we do? What kind of policies do we then have in absence of a dedicated strategy or instrument to tackle desertification? What we have at the EU level is mostly a range of sectoral and environmental policies and instruments that allow us to regulate activities that cause desertification, to incentivize activities that could prevent or reduce desertification. And we also have instruments that allow us to increase data, monitoring, knowledge training, etc. And I just listed on this slide a non-exhaustive list of causes of deforestation and relevant EU policies. And you see we have a range of types of instruments. Some are more strategic, covering the environment in general. Some are legal mandatory instruments focused on very specific sectors. And I wanted to just pull out two types of, let's say, instruments or frameworks, if we move to the next slide, to just illustrate how they can help us prevent or reduce desertification. So on the one hand, again, you might know we don't have a soil protection law or directive at EU level, but we do have different types of instruments that help us to move forward. So on the one hand, we're hoping, and this is still being negotiated, for a soil monitoring law, which would mean that we would finally be able to monitor the soil health across Europe and to identify appropriate measures to manage and restore soils. We also have the new EU Soil Observatory, which Adriana mentioned, which will greatly increase our data and knowledge, again, to drive actions, but also to feed into research and innovation. And speaking of research and innovation, obviously TerraSafe is funded through the Soil Mission and Horizon Europe, our research framework program, which also helps us to increase our knowledge when it comes to approaches to tackling desertification. On the other hand, we have lots of sectoral policies that might help us address some of the causes of desertification. And one, obviously, is the Common Agricultural Policy. Agriculture is one of the main drivers of soil degradation and thus desertification. But at the same time, it has as one of its objectives to foster sustainable development and efficient management of natural resources. And how do we do that? For example, farmers receiving subsidies on the Common Agricultural Policies, they do have to comply with a set of good agri-environmental conditions, some of which are specifically about soil health. For example, there is a need to keep soils covered for certain periods throughout the year. And there are voluntary agri-environment schemes that incentivize farmers to take up practices that are beneficial for soil health, which again can of course prevent and reduce desertification. So just two examples of the types of policies that we have at the moment. If we can move to the next slide. So what are we planning to do as part of TerraSafe? I just gave you a very brief overview of the policy context. And the first step for us is to understand how the current policy framework that we have, how do these policies already help us to combat desertification? So we're reviewing the instruments that already exist at EU level, but also in the member states or the countries where our pilot sites are located, to try to understand what is already in place. Is it effective? Where are the gaps? Where do we need new instruments, different instruments? How can we make them more effective? And then we want to explore the question of what kind of policies are needed to promote the widespread adoption of innovative solutions against desertification. And this is again something that we do in a co-design and assessment process, similar to how we are approaching the work in other work streams. And the idea is to develop a framework to co-design and assess different policy needs and instruments, and to then adapt this framework to the very specific conditions of each innovation partnership and the pilot areas, and to then develop together policy actions that could support the uptake of the innovations that we're testing. And the idea is to then synthesize these results and scale them up so that we can provide recommendations to other countries, to the EU level, that could help facilitate the uptake of these solutions at a wider scale beyond the pilot sites. And I think with that, we can actually close our presentation. This is just giving you a timeline. Obviously, at the moment, we're in the review understanding phase, trying to assess the current situation. And we'll be doing that for the first year and a half of the project before we then start working much more closely with our partners in the pilot sites to develop local solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks a lot. Now we're going to have a quick question and answer session. So if I could just ask our presenters to turn their cameras on and be available, that would be lovely. Some of you may have noticed that our names are changing. Just like you to know that no Charlottes have been hurt in that process. So I'm actually back to my given name, although I quite like being called Charlotte on occasion. So let's hold off from that. So we have some questions. So first of all, we have in the Q&A session. So just say to people, you can see a Q&A button. You can pop questions in there throughout these presentations, and please don't be shy. We're keen to hear from you. So please do that. I have a few questions that I can pose, but let's start off with Dejan, who has asked in the question that the state in which he's working and he lives in is not involved in this project. Is there any way in which they can be involved? I don't know where they are, but if you're not in the project already, how might you benefit from that? So let me start. I'm going to pose that to the boss. I'll ask that of Jakob, because he's in charge.
Well, I'm only in charge to the extent that pilot area partners or the partnerships will have to decide on the involvement of people outside the project in their activities in the pilot areas. So there are no miracles in the sense that we can extend the work foreseen to other areas. I think there are no resources for that. But they could participate in some of the activities, especially through learning, but also contributing with their own experience that may be helpful for the pilot area. So I would suggest, Dejan, to contact in the first instance the pilot area coordination partner in I think, Romania. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Fantastic, thank you. And of course, please do, like we've been saying, joining on the newsletter, follow the website. You may see opportunities coming up. Lindsay has her hand up, so please jump in, Lindsay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that a lot of the process about how we engage stakeholders, we do aim to share that. So based on our lessons in terms of what's working and what isn't, you'd be welcome to take those resources as they're available and to apply them in your study area, in your country as well. And we're also, it'd be important to make sure that we don't just have an impact within the pilot areas in this project. So yeah, we're happy to discuss opportunities. If you have other funding sources that you can use and you want to apply our approaches, you know, we can talk and we can help you to take things forward.
Lovely, thank you. I'm sure that would be very encouraging. Now I have a question from anonymous attendee. Thank you, anonymous. Given we've had lots of names, well done for being anonymous. So just to say, so far we've heard about stakeholders and some other parts of the methodology. I was wondering, has TerraSafe looked at traditional farming methods and how that they may prevent or reverse desertification? So
maybe I can say something
please do
on this. Yes, as will be explained later on, I think, in the session on Work Package 4, the idea is to compare the innovations, 3 of the innovations, with the current practice as well as traditional organic farming methods that we are finding in the pilot areas. And Work Package 3, the mapping by Adriana and colleagues, will also try this as one of the objectives to identify traditional methods and organic methods that should be considered as alternatives to the innovations proposed by the innovation partner. So yes, we are explicitly considering traditional farming methods and knowledge.
Great, thank you, Jakob. That's really helpful, and I think we'll reassure people about what the scale and scope of what we're doing. Just to add that Dejan has just said he's in North Macedonia. So North Macedonia was the area in question, which, given the conversations, might be something that I would hope to see that maybe we could find a way of working together. So thank you for that.
No, just sorry, Matt.
Go on.
Dejan, please send me an email and we can talk about this in some more detail. Because, like Lindsay said, we are actually looking forward to have spin-off projects in other areas. But the financial part is the difficult part. But we can have a chat to see how we can work this out.
Yeah, let's. We all know that money is difficult, but it's also not a reason not to try, isn't it? We can try and find money. We can try and make things work. Let's try and do that. So this then takes us to a next question that I have from Gimaine, who is asking what financing mechanisms are in place to support desertification control programs, especially for low-income countries. Now, I'd have to say that is beyond my span of knowledge. So I'm just looking along who might know. Jakob, Melanie, Lindsay. Lindsay's hand is in the air.
I can jump in on this through the UNCCD, because quite often governments that I can't remember how many parties the UNCCD has at the moment. I think it's most countries in the world have signed up to it. And they have a resourcing unit called the Global Mechanism, which helps work with governments to identify sources of development aid funding for low-income countries that can tackle desertification as part of a whole range of different environmental issues that are addressed. The Global Environment Facility is another one, and depending on exactly which country you're based in, there may be national level schemes as well, other donor schemes and so on. So if we look at how tackling desertification fits in the grand scheme of financing, there's a lot of money being thrown at climate change at the moment. And desertification is kind of the little sister of the climate change convention. But a lot of the efforts to tackle climate change can also help to tackle desertification. So there's a lot of scope for synergy between those funding sources. And as there's been an increasing emphasis on things like nature-based solutions as well, and indeed the innovations that we're going to be testing in TerraSafe come under the umbrella of nature-based solutions. So hopefully, as funding opens up a bit more for that as well, that will make more resources available to support those desertification control programs.
Great, that's really encouraging. And I think also, again, it's thinking about looking under the bonnet, isn't it, to sort of see, just because something's badged as climate change or something else, let's get down into the details, and it may well be something that's applicable. Now I have a few hands up, so I can let people speak. Now, just the way we're going at the moment, if we all disappear in a puff of smoke, don't worry, but we'll come back. So I think I've got Daniela Radu was the first person to put their hand up. So please unmute yourself and see whether this works. No, doesn't look like technically we are going to be able to take people asking.
Matt, I think it's more, but Daniela perhaps isn't live anymore.
Oh,
perhaps
okay.
their question was from a while ago, or I'm not sure,
Okay.
but we could try Fafia.
Yeah, let's do that myself. I'm having a strange conversation with but yes, please. let's give that a go. And I'm hoping that Daniela is alive, just not with us. So that would be a bit of a worry.
No, Fafia isn't either.
Okay,
let's
no,
try one more.
doesn't look like voices authorized. Yeah, okay. Can we?
No.
Sorry, we've given it a try. So please pop your questions in the Q&A. There will be a Q&A later as well. So if you have a question, please pop it in the Q&A. And equally, just as Jakob was indicating, we're very open for sort of email requests and through other means, because we realize that some of this will raise questions that you need to sort of be able to formulate and think about a little bit before we get there. Okay, that's great. I'm just also thinking in terms of stakeholders, and maybe this is back to Lindsay and Melanie, but what sort of stakeholders are you thinking to involve? And I think we've mentioned people who are farming and managing land, but are there others that you think we might be involving?
Yeah, I can jump into it. As well as farmers, we've got in the Romanian case, we have foresters as well, because obviously the issues there with forest change. It's if we think about agriculture and forestry, it's not just that there are activities that happen in a particular place. There's a whole range of different groups of people that are involved in the value chains that then take what's grown on the farm, basically all the way to your fork on your plate. So that you can eat that food. So there's stakeholders within those value chains, the producers, the transporters. There's the landowners who may be different from the land managers. There's the groups that make the laws about the land. Some areas might be protected and have certain conservation status anyway. So there might be other political groups that come in, other policy groups that come in, other agencies, there's extension officers and so on. So there's a whole range of different groups, as well as other considerations, like people coming from the finance sector. There's a lot of financial mechanisms there to support land users. So we just need to make sure in our stakeholder analysis that we do really capture all of these different groups. But they'll differ by pilot area, but there'll be some similarities as well.
Fabulous. And then I was just thinking, from the policy perspective, Melanie, would you be able to say something about the stakeholders there? When we talk about policy makers and policy actors, who are we thinking of?
Well, it depends. Well, obviously, it depends a little bit on the level that you're talking about. But I think thinking about the EU level right now, I think it's quite important that we make sure we involve people from different kinds of sectors. We just had the question about financing. A lot of times the financing or the funds are placed with one specific area. Everyone knows most of the money goes into agriculture right now. And there are lots of discussions going on at the moment about changing that, or maybe starting new funds to finance nature restoration and transitions to more sustainable agriculture. And these funds might be placed with different people, or let's say it's important that we make sure these funds are maybe managed by different types of sectors. So I think it's important when we talk about desertification to think cross-sectoral, and also at the EU level, we're not just thinking about policymakers in terms of the Commission, we're also thinking about politicians, as in MEPs, and I think that's also important at the national and regional level. And we're also thinking about representatives of different organizations who do have the capacity to influence and shape policy making, and they should, as we've seen in recent months. Again, talking about the agriculture sector, lots of farmers' protests. It's very, very important that we don't just make policies with policymakers, but that we talk to the people on the ground who are affected by desertification and who are part of the solution, as Lindsay already said. So this policy-making process needs to be inclusive across scales, but also across areas, I think.
Lovely. Thank you, Melanie. Now, we have come, all of this talk and all of this talk of desertification has certainly made me slightly thirsty, and we all need a break. I think we've been on line, so it is time for coffee. Thank you, Charlotte. So we're going to call a 10-minute coffee break, which I take to be is going to take us to 12:07. So please refresh yourselves, do what you need to do for 10 minutes, and then we'll be back with you. Okay, thanks a lot. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you've had a break. We'll just have a gentle reintroduction to allow people to run back to their desks and just for the coffee to brew a little, or your cup of tea, or whatever you're having. So the next session is very exciting. We're going to be talking with and about the innovations that we are suggesting and introducing to people. So that's a very novel and different part of TerraSafe, and Yanis will be joining us shortly to talk about that. So that's coming up. Then we'll have a talk from my colleague Jane Mills about developing exploitation plans, so how those innovations could be used and developed further. And then we'll move to a Q&A session about those innovations, where some of the people from the innovation companies themselves will be joining us and will be able to answer questions and speak for themselves. And at that point, we will all be able to complete a Slido. If we have time, we'll probably pop that in the chat so you get a chance to just give us a little bit of feedback, and then we can all break for a well-deserved lunch and perhaps slide into our weekend. So that's where we're up to next. I'm going to hand over to Yanis momentarily, and he will be able to talk us through the next part of our session. So hopefully we're at 11:08. There's not too many people running down corridors, real or virtual, who are not just running along to their home office. Just give people a little moment, and then Yanis can compose himself. He's looking ready. It's looking
totally, Matt. Totally.
That's always ready. I know. Always ready. Right. I'm going to say, Yanis, we've given people an extra 2 generous minutes, so they must be with us by now. So Charlotte, can we fire up the next slide? Thank you very much. Okay, all over to you, Yanis. Thanks a lot.
Yes, Matt. Thank you. Concerning lunch, I'm in Norway. We are now in lunchtime, so I'm eating while speaking, so that's I try to avoid that. But anyhow, thank you, Matt, for giving me the floor to present the activity that we are looking at in TerraSafe project. It is called Demonstrating and Assessing Traditional Organic Practices and Innovation. You're moving a bit too fast, Charlotte. Sorry. And we try in this activity to combine the work that Lindsay and Adriana just presented about, let's say, the social component, the local communities, the pilot area communities, with the biophysical work that Adriana's presented, and our results feed into what Melanie was talking about, the policy-driven, let's say, subsidy systems or whatever kind of methods you can find. As the others, we are not doing this on our own. This is also a co-leading process. We are working together with Aveiro University on this activity. So what I will do, I will not talk too much about the work within TerraSafe. The focus here is on the innovation technologies or the innovation partners in the project, and how we're going to use their products to be implemented in the pilot areas. So I will first start now, and then now you can go to the next one, Charlotte. Thank you. I will first start a bit on the procedure. What we do here is we are, in the first step, let the innovation partners tailor-make their proposals tailored to the pilot areas in the project. And for that, they are dependent on the information from the pilot area. So there is a combination with the work package that Adriana is working on. They are delivering the data that is needed for the partners to be able to tailor-make or to pilot their offers to the areas. The next step is that these offers will be presented to the specific pilot areas, and that the local communities or the local landowners make their choice on what they think is a promising methodology to be tested or to be demonstrated in their area. We are aiming at 3 technologies for each of the areas. We have 5 partners, solution partners that will deliver, and of those 5, 3 will be selected for each of the areas. And then there was a question on, do we also look at conventional systems? In step 3, we are going to identify actually the conventional practices and ongoing activities, as Jan Jacob already answered for, activities in terms of organic or alternative methodologies. And then in the final phase of this initial phase, we are actually going to implement and test, demonstrate, and compare those practices and measures in the specific study areas, study sites. So in the end, we end up with 5, hopefully 5 different systems: the conventional one, 3 chosen innovations from our innovation partners, and the ongoing traditional organic systems in this area. And those 5 will be monitored throughout the whole process of the project, which means that we're going to identify key performance indicators, and we're going to develop a monitoring framework so that we can actually assess the impacts of the different systems, and especially of the innovations. So going to the innovations now, which is the next slide. I'm not, I will start with the first one. It's alphabetically. The first one is what is called a technological solution, as you can see on the right top of the slide. This company, Agrodit, they deliver sensors, and this sensor provides real-time data of the soil status in terms of soil moisture, soil salinity, and soil temperature. The sensors are submerged, which means that it's possible for farmers to deal with their common activities. You can see one of the pictograms, you see a tractor driving over the sensor, and it communicates through an app. It's installed in the field, it stays there the whole season, and it produces the data and sends it to the app, where you have an option for alert the farmer for doing activities. So if you show the next one, this is then the sensor. It is a sensor that measures at 2 different depths, as said, the soil moisture, soil temperature, and the soil salinity status. This data can be used to compare different fields so that the farmer can optimize its management system in terms of fertilizer regime or irrigation systems. But in addition to that, this analysis can also be based on the trend that you can see from this data. So if you expect a dry period, or if you expect a rain episode, you can adapt based on the measurements that you've done from the period, previous period, your strategy in that. So that is the technology solution that we offer for the study sites. The next one is what we call a nature-based solution. This company, AgroBiogel, offers a lignin-based hydrogel. It's called retentins. This AgroBiogel is unique and innovative in such a way that it increases your water holding capacity, and it increases your organic matter. And so ultimately the idea is that it will increase your soil fertility. It can be used, of course, for conventional agriculture, but it is already accepted in Austria and Germany for organic farming as well. Well, you can see on the picture on the right side a small experiment where the 2 boxes on the left and the right are treated with the AgroBiogel, and the middle one is not. And this is after 10 days of dry period. So you can see an effect of the hydrogel on the crop here. If you show the next slide, please. So the main functions of this hydrogel is that it protects the plants from drought, because it increases your water retention capacity, and it releases this water again during drier periods. And as such, it reduces your irrigation water requirement. And it is, since it is a humus precursor, it increases also your organic matter content. And the whole idea is that it is as such improves your soil microbial activity, and thus it increases many of your soil functions. The next one shows also a bit of on an experimental result. On your left side, you see that there is an effect of the hydrogel on the soil of the plant root system. And on the right picture, it shows an effect on the soil structure by using this biogel. Okay, then on to the next solution that we have included in our project. This is EDAFOTEC. This company is also delivers an artificial soil and is also seen as a nature-based solution. What this artificial soil is basically a combination of organic and inorganic waste, which is put back on a degraded area so that that area can become fertile again for plant production. The whole idea is that by using organic and inorganic waste, you will increase your water retention capacity and you will deliver extra nutrients for plant growth. And since it includes organic material, it increases your carbon sequestration. And the idea is that this soil will be locally made within the area. So there is no long distance transport needed for creating the soil and using the soil at the local level. So if you show the next slide, it shows the difference between, let's say, conventional compost and the artificial soil that we talk about here. Conventional compost consists of organic waste, and which will be composted and then mixed into your existing soil, whereas the artificial soil is built up of organic waste, included construction and demolition waste, and biochar. So it forms a whole new soil, an artificial soil, which will be put on top of your degraded soil. So if we then go to the next provider, this is also a nature-based solution. Imflorestal, they are delivering EcoChar. And EcoChar is a combination of compost and biochar. It is made by pyrolytic reactors, and they produce the biochar component of the EcoChar. They are already in use in a lot of different land uses, different systems. It's used in vineyards, it's used in olive groves, orchards, and even in small horticulture gardens. So it is an amendment to the soil, and it even builds up a new soil. If you show the next one. So since it is in use already for a longer period, the key features are that it is already certified for use in organic farming. The advantage is you only need to apply it once, and this single application already reduces the need for irrigation water and fertilizers. It also increases your root development, and as such, it increases your production, your yield. By incorporating biochar in the mixture, it also increases your carbon sequestration, and as such, you will contribute to the climate change mitigation. So let's go to the last one. And this is a social solution, as we call it, which means it's not a technical one, it's not a nature-based solution, it's a social solution. And they offer a scheme for local communities to work on circular use of waste material. What is done here is that these kind of schemes will be tailor-made for the areas, and they are co-owned by the local community. So they are totally self-running, and they are not dependent on third parties from outside the community. It is really a community-driven technology or scheme of handling the circular circle of the waste in your area, of the green waste in your area. If you take the next slide. So some of the key features of this methodology, of this scheme, is that the compost production is adapted to and by the local area. In addition to that, there is a good monitoring system included in this compost production process, which means that you know the quality of your compost, and that you can monitor the quality of your compost, and that you even can adjust the compost quality to be used for specific crops or specific applications. By incorporating this at the local level, you solve the green waste problem at that level. It's simple to operate, it's low cost, composting plants are used for this, and it delivers a lot of opportunities for the local study areas. The next one shows a bit of the scheme, how that looks like, graphical interpretation of this setup. It's a bit difficult to read because a bit small in letters, but what you see here is that on top you see the input of park, garden waste, and agricultural pruning, or all kind of other green waste that you can think of. On the right side, outside the dashed square, you see the manure as an input for your organic waste, and then inside the dashed square you see a circle, and the right side of the circle shows the technological part of the procedure. So the waste collection, the composting center, the production of the compost, and then feeding the compost back onto the land of the farmers or any other land use that need compost. On the left side, you see more the social economical aspect of it. The process is owned by farmers. They pay a subscription fee for it, in addition to subsidies that are available or not, in addition to local governments that want to support this system. And the whole strength of this is that local technologies and local tools from the farmers are used for making this circle around in terms of waste management. I'm going a bit too fast, Matt. I hope that's fine for you, because now I'm on the timeline for these activities. What we are doing now at the moment is first of all, we're going to provide the innovation partners with the data they need to tailor make their offers. In addition to that, we are looking at the scientific literature to see if these innovation techniques are already published somewhere, if there are results already available that can feed into the decision-making process for the local landowners to decide on which technology they want to implement. Next year, we start the discussion with the local study sites to select the conventional system, the most used conventional system, and if there are any alternative technologies like the traditional organic systems. And based on these discussions and based on the offer that the partners will make to the study sites and the selection of the study sites, we will end up in 5 systems that will be implemented and monitored during the whole process of the project, which means until 2029, in terms of their impact on environmental key indicators, key performance indicators. I will not go too much in detail on that because that will happen within 2 years, and that has to be fine-tuned in the coming period. So I know that there will most likely be a lot of questions about all those different products. The innovation partners are all available in this meeting. And I don't know how you want to do this, Matt, if you want to open the floor now or if you want to do that later. You're muted, Matt.
How about that?
Yeah, that's better.
Better, thank you. That was the most basic bit of technology we've been dealing with. So, well, thank you, Janus, and I appreciate that. That was a challenging thing to do, to introduce the technologies, which are very varied, very innovative. But like you say, we have the technology partners with us. So what I'd encourage people to do is pop their questions in the Q&A session, because they're with us and they'll be coming to us shortly. Maybe you can formulate your questions and think about what you'd like to ask. What we're going to do now is move to my colleague Jane, who's going to talk about how we plan to exploit these opportunities and how we're going to use this. This both explains the methods that we're using in TerraSafe, but also gives you some chance to think about questions, pop them in the chat, and then we will return after Jane's presentation with panelists to talk about these innovations and answer your questions. Okay, so I'm hoping Jane's there and she's ready.
Yep, I'm here.
Yep. Grand stuff, Jane.
Yep.
Okay, I will hand over to you.
Thanks, Matt. So like Matt here and Charlotte, who is very busy in the background, I'm from the Countryside and Community Research Institute, based at the University of Gloucestershire in the UK. And we're leading the work in TerraSafe on the communication, dissemination, exploitation, and the cross-project collaborations. So next slide. Yep. So what happens when the project has finished testing and assessing all the different innovations that Janus has been talking about? Well, that for us is certainly not the end of the project. So part of our work will be to develop plans with the aim of rolling out these TerraSafe certified innovations. It's very important for us that after all the effort that we've put into the project, that the benefits of the project actually continue beyond its lifetime. And to ensure that this happens, during the project, we'll actually be planning for the upscaling and the outscaling of these innovations that have been identified as beneficial. And this will occur not only across the actual kind of pilot regions that we're working in, but beyond that as well. Next, please. So within these plans, the intention is to develop a toolkit for each of the innovations. So depending on the particular innovation, this toolkit might, for example, contain a step-by-step guide for establishing the innovations. We might have some videos from farmers explaining their own experiences of trying out the innovations, as we know that farmers like to learn from each other. And also, we will be providing sort of fact sheets that contain practical information about the innovations, including, which is again is very important for land managers, the economic viability of those innovations. And this will help them to evaluate the innovations, whether it's suitable for them, and also help them in implementing the innovations. We'll also be working with our innovation providers to produce commercial business plans that will identify their target audiences and the marketing potential for their particular innovations. And then finally, the plan will identify ways to continue engagement with partnerships with other projects and networks that we've kind of developed over the course of the project, including the soil mission living labs and the lighthouses, with the aim of eventually encouraging the uptake of these innovations across a much broader area. So really that's our plans, and the ultimate aim then is to ensure that we achieve a lasting legacy for TerraSafe to combat desertification. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Now we'll move to the questions and answer session.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much. I think that just helps complete the picture for people about what our plans are, about how we're going to take these technologies, introduce them, work with people in our co-productive way, and then hope to embed a legacy for TerraSafe. So I think that hopefully is really helpful for people. Okay, we have a Q&A session now for the innovation partners. So I think it would be just really helpful for those innovation partners just to introduce themselves. I can see some of them up in, because clearly I've met them before, so I can see some of them on screen, and I can see some of them currently disguised as a Susanna, which is perhaps not helpful unless you are Susanna. So I'll ask people to introduce themselves on alphabetical order, which is how Janis introduced them from their innovation companies. So I think I've seen Gibson. Gibson, can you just say hello and introduce yourself and say just a couple of sentences about AgroBiogel?
Hello, I hope everybody, you can hear me? We
can hear you loud and clear.
Right. Thanks. I'm looking on the other side because this is where my screen is. So we are AgroBiogel, and AgroBiogel is, let's say, a very young company. I invented AgroBiogel when I was at the University in Vienna, Austria. So what is the purpose of AgroBiogel? It's a water-absorbing polymer, which is wood-based, lignin-based already. So what it does is, when it rains or when you irrigate, it takes the water, stores it, and then slowly release it to the plants. And this way, the plants, on one hand, you reduce on irrigation plus associated costs. Second, if it is you don't have irrigation and you are depending on the rain, what it means is if there's no rain for, say, 3 weeks or a month, then your plants can use this water in the hydrogel. So as also said already, it mimics humus and actually degrades into humus, which means by putting AgroBiogel, you are really converting even deserts, 100% sand soil into agriculture productive soil. That is, it traps the nutrients, keeps the nutrients, increases microbial activity. In a way, we're making degraded soils back into agriculture productive soils.
Beautifully done, Gibson. Beautifully done. So just hold on there. We'll wait for some questions. I'm sure people are punching in questions.
There is a question about cost.
Yeah, we will come back to it. We will come back to it. Okay, I think I see Fernando from Agrodit. Fernando, can you introduce yourself and just briefly, once again, introduce Agrodit? That would be great.
Hello. Yes, thank you, Janis, for the good explanation of Agrodit. Indeed, we are the only technological solution in the project, and Agrodit is a small company as well. We are based in Sweden. Actually, we are two co-founders from Spain, and we saw the need of developing a tool that is easy to use, easy to install, replicable, and that measures in real time the most important variables from the soil, which is temperature, humidity, and electrical conductivity, that can track the accumulated salts in the soil, which is very important in desertification areas in this case.
Lovely. Thank you, Fernando. That's great. Thank you. And I'm not sure I can see anybody, but I'm hoping there's somebody from EDAFOTEC. Anybody who?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
but I couldn't change my name proper. I don't know what's happening.
You've just done it, Veronica. It has just changed in front of me. So welcome. So just in the nick of time. Brilliant. Okay, please introduce yourself, introduce your technology.
Thank you, Matt. I'm Veronica Asensio, the Scientific Director of EDAFOTEC. And what we do is nature-based solutions for rehabilitating degraded soils. And in this case, for TerraSafe, we would like to apply our artificial soils that are made with organic and inorganic wastes. Of course, they are previously selected, character asset, and mixed in a proper amount of proper proportion. And they are tailor-made for each case. So we did the mixture locally also for revalorization of local wastes, and we adapted the formula to the characteristics of the future use of the land, or the future plantation, the plants, or whatever is necessary, or even water retention, carbon capture, or everything that the land needs.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That's really helpful, and I'm sure we'll come back to you in a moment. So somebody from Imflorestal, I'm not looking, just give people a pause just in case they're there.
I'm
Otherwise...
here, Matt.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, go for it,
Hello. I'm Ana Machado. I'm from Imflorestal Florestal. I'm the current research and development manager of the company and responsible for our product EcoChar. Our company produces biochar made from sustainable biomass through the transformation using pyrolysis. And this biochar is a really high porous material with a high content of carbon. And it acts in the soil like a sponge. It has a high capacity of retaining water as well as nutrients. When we have excess of nutrients being released by compost or fertilizers, we can catch it and retain in our porous material, and it will be released to the plants as they need it, as well as happens with the water. So we already have our product in the market, as Yannis already said. It have a name as EcoChar. However, since the biochar efficiency will depend greatly on the type of soil characteristics, as well as the ratio application of the biochar, we are compromised and collaborating as much as we can in projects of research, so we can adapt and have the best information to provide to our clients of how biochar should be applied and which rate our clients will have the highest success. So we are here in TerraSafe to provide this information and also to have a greater variety of scenarios of how we can prove that biochar can work.
Lovely. Thank you, Anna. That's great and really helpful for people. Now, for a few minutes, I've been able to see Michael from Isotech, which has been greatly reassuring. So I'm hoping that Michael from Isotech is Michael from Isotech. So Michael, you know what I'm going to ask. So introduce yourself and introduce your technology.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. I'm maybe the older guy here. Wow. Okay, from 1995 that I'm working on my PhD on composting and co-composting. That means creating recipes around different organic substrates. Whatever you have in your neighbor, whatever you have in your community, can be easily transformed to a valuable compost. And this idea eventually became part of our consulting efforts as Isotech. But what we have seen is that lately, European Union introduced the community-based social tools that allows the locals to become part of the solution and actually be trained to use their own materials to do the most out of it. So let me explain exactly in 1 two sentences that actually, in order to transform different substrates into valuable compost, you need to know the recipes, you need to know how to mix them, how to treat them in a way that will become compost and not remain wastes. And European Union is putting a lot of pressure in different waste streams in order to accept them and to transform them from waste stream into valuable products. And what we are doing actually is we go to each and every community, each and every area, and we train the locals to find out how many, to map their substrates and bring them into one center in order to be treated into this valuable compost product. Now, they will have the ownership, they will share, as circular economy says, they will create sharing infrastructure. So the most amazing problem that we face at this moment everywhere in Europe is that in order to create a homemade compost facility, you need a few millions, or at least 1 million, because the machinery is very expensive, the capex is very high, the opex is very high, the compost value at the end of the day is very high. What we are proposing here, and we have tried it in 2 local communities, is at the end of the day is to lower the cost of the compost lower than 20 euros, in some cases lower than 10 euros per cubic meter. And this is actually what you get: a valuable compost, a well-documented and evaluated compost with a very low cost, and a community-owned scheme.
Beautifully done, Michael. Thank you very much. That's very nifty, very neat. So hopefully what we've seen for everybody is Yanis has explained this, and we've diagrammaticized this, so you can see some diagrams, you can see what's happening. And also we've had everybody speak to this, and we've had a really nice kind of suite of options, from social, collaborative, to quite technological, to sort of processes that some of us may be familiar with, to technologies that are very novel. So that's really part of what we're offering here. In the chat, you will have seen links to all of these innovations, so you can follow them up in detail, and I'm sure they would really welcome questions and approaches from you. So please be ready to do that. So we have a few questions in the chat, and just to say, on all the questions in the chat, we are capturing them. So if we don't answer you, you've not been forgotten. If we don't answer you today, then it's all gone into the mix, and we'll make sure that we come back to it. Now, Michael raised a very important point that I think will probably be pressing on lots of people, is how much do these things cost? We're working with often landowners, and we know that margins in agriculture are very low, margins in forestry are very low, and people don't necessarily have a big capital base. So let's have a little think about the pricings of this. So I'm going to just jump in and ask Fernando to give us a little bit of an idea about how much money we might be talking and how it's affordable for people. Hoping he's still there.
You're asking to me?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I was actually answering the question in the Q&A and missed a little bit.
Multitasking, Fernando. So just explain to us how it's affordable.
You mean what means affordable for our solution?
Yeah.
So if we compare to similar solutions, you can find other sensors, which is, as the name says, just a sensor with some type of cable where you need to buy extra data logger or the logic behind that sends all the data through the cloud. So similar sensors would be around 1,000 euros for just one sensor. So we are trying to reduce this cost at least to half.
Fantastic. So,
And also, also
please.
one important detail is that the sensors communicate up to 10 kilometers from the receiver, so that allows to install less infrastructure for a bigger amount of sensors in the same area.
Fabulous. Now, I was going to pose the same question to Gibson, and then I'll come to Jakob, who's got his hand up. So Gibson, tell us something about the affordability of AgroBiogel.
Yeah, thanks. AgroBiogel, just a point to say we are already on the market. Now this is our second year. We are on the market, but what we did is we segmented our agriculture or our markets into segments. We have home and garden, then we have high value or intensive agriculture, then we have commodity agriculture. So the logic of our development phase is that we are starting, of course, in the home and garden and intensive agriculture, where the returns are very high and they are less price sensitive. So they will go down. We are having our second production plant, which is 10 times bigger than what we have now. And here we'll produce maybe even around 10,000 tons going up. This way, the price also goes down. So I'm, as you can clearly see, I'm trying to avoid to talk about how much does it cost because it's a logical. Everything is logical to volume. It's a volume-driven business. So in a way, it's the more you produce, the target. Of course, our target is to be around below 600 per ton.
Fantastic. That's great, Gibson, and I think everybody will appreciate that. Scaling up.
Yeah, but don't
volume.
Feel free to contact us now. We can talk about the price with my head of sales and marketing.
Okay,
it's more suitable for that.
That's all right. There are deals to be done, clearly, so people know who to get in touch with. Okay, Jakob, you have your hand up, so I'm hoping for some questions.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's just a remark. I have a general remark at the end of the answers of all the innovation partners on the question of funding. But for Fernando, I just want to remember that what I understood, that Agrodit doesn't actually sell the equipment, it rents the equipment. So it is a lease-based approach. So
exactly,
costs then also depend on, let's say, the period that you want to use it and so forth and so on.
Okay.
Right?
That's a really helpful and important clarification. I think many people would be, very keen to understand that. So for those people who haven't spoken about the affordability of their option, Michael spoke very clearly about why it was more affordable than others. So I'm thinking, Veronica, do you want to just say something about affordability?
Just sorry, the microphone. Yes, about the cost of the technology, for example. Mm-hmm. We, for example, in the case of TerraSafe, the elaboration of the artificial soil will be in charge of the agriculture, so the landowners could do it. For the experimental things that we're going to do, of course, we are in charge, but thinking about the future use of the artificial soils, they can do it by themselves. So they can spend like 10 or 15 euros per ton or something like that. So something like that, because we're in charge more in the consultancy part. And of course, for small pilot experiments, we are in charge of the elaboration and everything. But after that, they have their own receipt. They can do it by themselves. So it's not very expensive, really.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Veronica. And Anna, do you want to speak again to this question of affordability?
I can speak a little bit. I think biochar, like the other technology, will depend greatly on how will be used. For example, one thing is the Iberomassa Florestal have is a commercial price for Portugal. Use one general biomass that is our feedstock. Other thing is applying biochar in different locations will have different prices, because imagine biochar production will depend of, are you going to use feedstock that you as a landowner, agricultural owner, have as a residue in your farm, like prunings of orchards, like if you have vineyard prunings, you can transform them in biochar using your own equipment of producing biochar, or subcontracting a local company that produce biochar to do that transformation for you. And like this, you have circular economy. You are also reusing your own residues, and you are putting in the soil to increment the productivity of that specific culture. So I think the price will really depend on the strategy that you are going to use, using the technology solutions that we are providing here as example in TerraSafe.
Lovely, thank you. And I just want to go back to Michael, who does have his hand up, just to give him that equal opportunity. So Michael, please.
Yes, just to say that it's also a matter of policies and national and European policies that we have to keep in mind for each and every of the products and the services we are discussing of. I will give you an example. European Union gave a very specific and strict instruction to Cyprus that we have to raise the content of soils, the concentration of organics in soils from less than 1%, from 0.2 to 1%, into at least 3%. That means from a few calculations that we have to use at least few million of tons for the next few years of some kind of organic going into the soil. So it depends from what we have in mind. If it's a very specific introduction of a specific product that we need to have, or if it's a widespread effort to bring organics back to the desertified areas of Europe. So that's why each and every, I must say, each and every product actually answers to a certain need. And this is something that we have to keep in mind. That's why for our effort is to bring as much as possible of this organic matter back to the soil, which other products is in different angle and could be used for different purposes. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Michael. And I think that's a really lovely tone to have, that, you know, this isn't about a fight to the death or doing each other down. This is about working for a greater mission of, you know, conserving and preserving our soils, building them up, fighting the loss of the soil and, you know, associated climate change and biodiversity. So, you know, this is about building us all up and experimenting and innovating to do so. So Jakob, please join us.
Yes, thank you for giving me the floor again. Just as a final remark about the question of costs, which is of course a very important question, is that we recognize the importance of that in TerraSafe, and so in the solutions to be proposed by the innovation providers, we'll have predefined that there will be 3 different cost levels: low, middle, and high. So this also allows pilot areas, taking into account their own economic situation, social situation, to decide how much money they actually want to spend in improving their soils and getting better soil quality, but also better production. Okay, so we don't have here, we're not talking here about one cost per solution. It depends very much on application rates and of course other factors as well that we need to take into consideration. But it is explicitly contemplated in TerraSafe, just to make this very clear.
Lovely, thank you, Jakob. Okay, the time is upon us. We have scheduled this, and I am very, very grateful that you have given us your time this morning. We've had consistently over 100 people with us, sometimes towards 130, all the way through this. So I'd like to thank everybody who's spoken this morning. our innovation partners for taking time to join us as well, because I appreciate, you know, they're trying to build up companies and do those kind of things. So time is precious. In the chat, you will see a Slido that has appeared. Please click that link and give us some feedback about how we can do this better in the future and how we can tailor this to your needs. So please make use of that Slido to feed back to us. Charlotte has put on the screen all of the ways in which you can get in touch with us and be involved. There will be a recording of this and you can see all of our innovation partners. The key to it is obviously the website. Many people will find lots of things new and interesting in the newsletter in particular. There is a great big community. I really appreciate all of the questions and time that you've taken this morning. So please keep with us. This is a beginning. It's a really exciting beginning. I think this summer has shown all of us how important this work is. Wherever you are, you know, you may have been under the blistering sun all summer, or like me, under the torrential rain, or you may have had both, or you may have been watching the fires burning in the hills around you. You know, we know the importance of this. We know how vital this is. It's a journey that we're going to make together, and I'm really excited that we're at the beginning of it in TerraSafe. It's lovely to see a community of people stretch across the EU and beyond, not forgetting our friends and neighbours who are part of that. We all know why we're here in terms of, you know, cultivating that resilience, restoring the earth. So really, really great to have your company today. So we're going to finish up. We're going to stop recording and we're all going to go for our lunch. I appreciate some of you may have broken already and had to eat your lunch during the presentation. But let me wish you a really great afternoon and a wonderful weekend, and that, you know, you and all the people that you love are safe and well this weekend. So thank you very much for your participation. We're going to stop now, so feel free to leave, but thank you once again. Take care.